Good afternoon. I'm honored to welcome you all on today's webinar hosted by Jananvo. My name is Pragya from the marketing team, and I have the privilege of being your host for this insightful session. Before we begin, I'm pleased to introduce our esteemed speakers, Sheetal and Parveen, who are subject matter experts in anonymization and have been working in the industry for over the 5 years, and they will be sharing the invaluable insights on challenges in identifying personal information within clinical data. Without further ado, let's begin this webinar. I encourage you all to actively engage and make the most of this enriching opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pragya, for the introduction. Is my screen visible?
Shreetal.
Yeah, thank you, Pragya. So, hello everyone. I'm Sheetal Bagul from Janinvo, and today I would be presenting on the topic common questions or challenges in identifying personal information within clinical data. Moving on to the next slide. So, for the next two slides, we have is the screen visible, right, Pragya?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So moving on to the next slide, we have few definitions which are related to the data transparency. So the first one is the anonymization, and this is the process of protecting the privacy of data subjects, which also includes the clinical study participants. And this helps in reducing the risk of re-identification of the patients. The other one is the de-identification. So this is a general term for any process where the association between a set of identifying data and the data subjects are removed. The next two are the direct identifiers and the indirect or quasi-identifiers. So direct identifiers are the variables which are unique, and this can lead to the identification of an individual on its own. So for example, we have the name of the person, telephone number, fax number, etc. And the indirect identifiers, these are the variables which may not lead to identification on an individual on its own, but when these are combined with the other indirect identifiers, the individuals can be identified. So over here we have example of gender, date of birth, date of death, geographical location. And we have more few definitions over here. The first one is the individual patient data. So here this is the person specific data which is recorded for each subject in a clinical study, and this record is separate for each subject. Another is the personal information, or we can call this as protected personal data. So this is the information about the individual where the identity of the person can be revealed. The next is the re-identification. Here it is the re-establishment of the association between a set of identifying data and the data subject found in data or documents. The next is the re-identification risk. This is the probability or you can say the risk of probability where the re-identification can occur. The next one is the redaction. This is the masking or hiding an information of the individual. And the last one is the sensitive data. So this can be any information which may not be an identifier, but this is a personal information of the subject, and it can motivate the adversary to identify the subjects. Moving on to the next slide now, why there is a need for the data sharing. So this is needed by the health authorities like EMA, FDA, Health Canada, and this is done for the public disclosure. It is also facilitating the meaningful reanalysis of the study or of the results. Then this would be helpful for the cross-industry analysis to evaluate the trends of the adverse events, you can say, for a particular molecule of a therapeutic class. And then the developments in therapies, just to analyze like how the developments is going on. This can be used for the internal research projects, for the innovative collaborative projects, even for the data donation for EC consortium. And from the external parties like clinicians or academicians, they may require the data for the further analysis of the trial data after the retention date expires. Now, once there is a need for the data sharing, and then why anonymization step is so critical, because the clinical data, it includes the pseudonymized data, and when this data it gets combined with other data, it can lead to re-identification of subject identity. So the Data Privacy Act, they are very particular for the privacy, to protect the privacy of the subjects or the patients. And if this is not done, then they can there could be a hefty fines on the data controller. So the regulatory bodies like EMA or Health Canada, they are expecting that data needs to be anonymized in such a way that the residual risk is below threshold. This is an example of a narrative where on the left hand side you can see that it's a redaction with the qualitative risk assessment approach, and on the right hand side it is redaction plus transformation with quantitative risk approach. So in the left hand side, you can see the patient ID. This has been redacted. The data has been masked. And on to my right side, you can see the patient ID has been transformed or pseudonymized. We can say that. Even the dates are redacted on my left hand side, but on the right hand side, the dates are transformed, or we can say that dates are offset. So these are the few examples. Like when we go ahead with the qualitative risk approach, everything is, all the data gets hide. But in the quantitative approach, we think of even the transforming the data instead of just pure redaction. Now, what are the direct, indirect, and sensitive information? So direct identifiers, as I mentioned previous, that it can identify a person with no additional information, for example, name, fax number, and all. The indirect identifiers, they can identify a person when combined with other indirect identifiers, not on its own. And the sensitive information, these are the unique events or the information of an individual which could be of interest for adversary. Now, for any information which needs to be identified, it should be replicable, it should be distinguishable, and it should be knowable. Now here we have quoted few examples of the direct identifiers and the indirect. So in the direct identifiers, you can see the IDs or names like subject ID, investigator IDs, randomization IDs, then even the free text variables, what we have the verbatim terms for events or medical history, or if there are any comments on eCRF, these all come under the free text variables. And for the indirect identifiers, we have dates. Now, this can be your date of birth, date of death, event dates, MH dates. Then there are the demographic information like gender, age, race, and many more, which can act as the indirect identifiers. Also, the unique or rare events like evaluation of medical history, CONMEDS, AE, lab, for any unique or rare events, these come under the indirect identifiers. Now, this is the more about the dates, like where the dates comes into the narrative. So it can be the study event date for the subject, or the medical history date, or we can say the date of birth. If the patient has died, then date of death is also the indirect identifier. And CONMEDS dates also come under this. Now there are few dates you can see over here, this date and this date. These are the dates of the report or the database log date. This is not for any particular patient, so these are not the identifiers. And the last one is that all date variables in the data set, they are identifiers and it is present by subject. So this generally comes into SDTM ADM data set. The next is the direct identifiers. So the subject IDs, investigator IDs, though investigator IDs are not found in the documents, they are more into the data set. Then the study personal name, like medical monitor name or the sponsor signatory name, the principal investigator or the coordinating investigator. All these are the direct identifiers. Coming back to the demographic information, so sex, age, race, these are the most common information one can find in the narrative document or maybe in the mini narratives in the CSR body. Height, weight, countries, they are also mentioned in narrative documents. So these informations are very common in narratives, mini narratives, and listings within section 14 or CSR body. Demographics in SDTM or ADSL in ADAM dataset contains most of the demographic information. Now, what are the free text information? They are found in the narratives, and any information these can directly or indirectly identify the subject. So we have quoted two examples. In the first one, you can see that family shifted from Chicago to Orlando. So this is a transfer of the patient, or transfer in the location. This can identify a person, or if it is the road accident in the next example, this can also identify a person. Now, what are the unique or the rare events? These are very much found in narratives, and this can be a sensitive information also for a patient. So rare event we have listed down here, and the sensitive event are also over here. So narratives, midi narratives, and again the listings within section 14 or CSR body, these data are found over here. Evaluation of medical history CONMED AE lab data set for any unique or rare events. They are there in SDTM or ADM data set. Now these are the few anonymization methods for dates, what we go ahead. So for the date offset, we generally pick up the random offset or the algorithm offset. So in random offset, any data, any random date is picked for a particular subject, which may range between the value -60 to 60. For the algorithm offset, fuse algorithm is used where date offset is calculated with the formula which is there on the screen. Now the reference date can be your informed consent date or the randomization date, whichever is available for that patient. The next is the date relative. So here the dates are replaced with the study day. So instead of a particular date, it would come as study day 15 or study day 20. And this can be also useful for to understand the relatability of the adverse event with the study drug. And the last one is the partial redaction, where the year or month of date is redacted, and only the where the year or month of date is redacted. Moving on to the next one, that is the anonymization method for the subject IDs. Now here we have the three methods. One is the pseudonymized, where we assign a random value to maintain the format. So we have to assign the subject ID understanding both the alphanumeric data. In the recode, it is just replacing the subject ID with the numeric value. So you can see in the example, the A234, this has been replaced by 5432. So here the alphabet is not considered. And the last one is the shuffle. So number of unique values within variables are shuffled, and no value will be same for any record after shuffling. So there is a shuffle in the values over here. Now we have the demographic information and what approach we can take for in the anonymization method. The very first one, which is very frequently used, is the generalization. Here the continuous values generalize, we continuous values into ranges and categorical values to broader categories. So like for example, country can be categorized into continents. Like for England, it can be Europe. For US, it can be North America, something like that. For the race, we can make it like Asian, non-Asian, or white or other. The next one is the aggregate. So we aggregate the extreme values, mean of all values in variable or specific character value. So for example, here we have mentioned that if patient's weight is more than 100 kg, then here the weight of the patient would be replaced by the overall mean of weight, just to avoid the risk of re-identification. And the last one is the add noise. So noise is added to the continuous value variable based on the random number within a particular range data set. So here the age value is randomly moved within 10 years interval, and it has been replaced by value between 17 to 27. These are the few anonymization methods what we can do for the free text variables or the sensitive data or rare events. We can remove the variable from the data set, or we can self-suppress, we can remove the information. So for example, A term is equal to death, the death path has been removed, so there is a self-suppression. Or the other one is the redaction, where we replace the identified text with another text. So here in the example, you can see left knee operation. The left term has been redacted, and the only information which is available for the public, it is only the knee operation. Now, this is a original data set over here, and this is the de-identified set. So here you can see the subject ID, they have been pseudonymized. The age has been generalized. Sex is retained, but the race has also been generalized. The investigator name, there is a self-suppression done over here for the verbatim term and the investigator name. And even for the A start dates and A end dates, that there is a date offset, you can see in this example. Now we would move with the next slide, like what are the identifiers, what are the challenges associated with that. So when it comes to the documents or the data set, the medical history is a big challenge, like how to go ahead with the medical history or the comments, and even the adverse events. If there are any study personal information like name, address, email ID, signature, job role, job title, and what approach we have to take when it comes to the summary tables. Parveen, if you can join with me for this one.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sheetal. So yeah, so the first part was more related to that. What are the different identifiers that we can find in clinical data, either it is a data set or documents. And over the past 6-7 years, we have seen that anyone who is starting new or working on these documents to identify personal identifiers, they have a challenge or they need some training around medical history, that how to identify and identifying information within medical history, concomitant medications, adverse events. And sometimes we have seen there is a confusion around that, out of all the study personnel name, which names need to be redacted or kept. And sometimes we assume that job role and job title are also different, and which of these should be redacted. So we believe that job titles are something which could be unique within an organization, and if the vendor name is given with the job title of a study personnel, then that can be identified. And last is that summary table. So yeah, there is discussion all the time going on between sponsors, vendors, and associations like Fuse, that what type of information from the summary tables need to be redacted. So if demographic tables have low frequency, then do we need to redact it or not? And what are the implications there which could lead to identification of the subjects? So in medical history, Sheetal, as you have shown in the suggestion, so generally we can go with retaining most of the medical history unless until it is a rare event that has occurred, or if there is any unique or sensitive medical history related to subjects. But sometimes a user may be interested in knowing the medical history which is relevant to study indication or the adverse event that is in discussion within the narratives, and that could be of interest, and that may need to be retained. And at times, I think, Sheetal, we may also need to replace these medical history terms with SOC if we have that rare medical history terms.
Yeah, Parvin. So if the SOC is provided in the data set, yeah, we can take that approach also. So instead of redacting the medical history, we can replace with SOC for the more data utility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And for adverse event, we have mostly seen that adverse event has a very high utility from the perspective of safety due to the new drug that is going to be marketed or not. But yeah, adverse events need to be retained. But again, I think the high level terms, SOC and all, can be used if there is any rare or sensitive events.
Yeah, Parvin.
Okay. And for study personnel information, Sheetal, I think it's only the principal and coordinating investigator names that has been requested by regulatory bodies that those should be retained. But
Yeah,
apart from that, all other uh, individuals' name need to be redacted.
yeah, Parvin.
Mhm.
Because the principal or coordinating investigator name, they are mostly available on the public domain. So it's like the even the regulatory authorities feel that these are available and this can be uh, retained on the documents or the data set.
Mhm. Right, right. And how do you identify the job roles and job titles? That how do you segregate that this could be considered as a job role and this can be considered as job title, and then we are saying that we are redacting job titles and not the roles.
So job roles would be more like, Parveen, it would be like biostatistician, medical writer. So there are many medical writers in a company, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But some would be the principal medical writer. So that is the unique designation given to that particular person. So this can lead to the identification. Like if I mention the principal medical writer, so it can be easily identified that who is that person. But
Mm-hmm.
just keeping this as medical writer, so yeah, with that no one can identify the person if other
Mm-hmm.
details are redacted of the person.
Okay, okay. Yep, I think, and I have also seen a kind of confusion or disagreement on the signatures. Yeah, I think signatures need to be redacted, that's for sure. But sometimes if there is a handwritten text, so that also need to be redacted, or at times what you have seen in your experience.
I have seen most of the time that we have redacted the handwritten text, like we do not keep it retained, we have
Mm-hmm.
redacted it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think there is a some like different opinions around it, that if there is a handwritten text or some numbers are written on a old reports and those were scanned, and also some people may argue on that those numbers are not reflecting that who has written it unless until it is signature. So at times some people can argue around it that handwritten text, unless until it has specific information about someone, then those should not be redacted. But both are, I think, if justified, both approaches are acceptable.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
And
And I,
Parveen, yeah.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
please
would
go ahead.
like to add for the comments like
Mhm.
generally at times the brand names are also mentioned in the narrative documents. So in that
Mhm.
scenario, we need to replace the brand name with the generic one because like for example, if it is mentioned like some Chinese name as a herbal preparation, so if we do not replace
Mhm.
that with a herbal preparation, though we have I mean mask the data that patient is from China, but this information can reveal that the patient is actually Chinese one. So we have to replace the brand names with the generic one for the convent.
Yeah, agree. Okay, and I think one point which we have not added on this slide is related to summary tables. So how do you handle the summary tables, or if the questions are coming around that, what type of information from the summary table of demographic or adverse events should be redacted?
So, Parveen, in summary table, we generally prefer to retain the data because it would affect the data utility. But again, it depends upon like if there is, understand the SOC is neoplasm and there is only one event, that is bladder cancer. The preferred term is the only bladder cancer and there is one or two patients. So here, if we don't redact the bladder cancer, in the summary table, anyone can link in the narrative because in the narratives we might have replaced the bladder cancer with the neoplasm. So there is high chances of re-identification. So in this scenario, we prefer to redact the preferred term in the summary table. But only in this scenario, or else even the regulatory authorities, they say that we have to retain the data in the summary table, or a strong justification is needed if we have redacted the data in the summary table.
Yeah. Right. Okay, and in the demographic summary tables, there is no, you think that there is no chance of re-identifying if there is a low frequency, say on race, any particular race or gender or ethnicity?
No, Parveen. Generally, it is more for the adverse event tables and not for the demographic table. Though I remember, like I have seen at times, like just in one of the project that we have redacted the data even in the summary table of demographic because it was just a one patient and that was the chance of re-identification was very high. So we have taken care that in the summary table also. But it is very rare that in the summary tables we have to hide the data.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Yeah, I think that was all. Right, Sheetal?
Yeah, Parveen, that's all.
Yeah, so if there are any questions, I would request all of you to just send it in the messages, or even after that, if there are any questions, just send us an email and we will get you the answers. Okay, thank you everyone for joining, and thanks Sheetal, thanks for presenting.
Thank you, Sheetal and Parveen, and thank you everyone for your participation and contribution. We hope you found this webinar informative and enriching. Stay connected with us for future events and updates. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.